Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today we are going to be making some luthiers clamps, so let's dive in and have a little bit of fun. Today we're going to be working with a very rare and valuable piece of wood called oak. I know, we're breaking the bank on this and doing something completely new, but yes, the original one was made out of maple, but because I'm experimenting and trying new things, today we're going to play with some oak. First, I'm going to grab this block that's 3/4 by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to rip it down to a little bit less than 1/2 inch, not quite 3/8, somewhere around that range. I'm just looking for something that's about this size. I may end up changing this in the initial plans that I'll be putting out with it, but today I'm just kind of experimenting, seeing what sticks and trying out new things. I love learning new things, and that's what really keeps me coming back to hand tools. Once we get ripped down, we're going to plane it down nice and smooth, get it relatively parallel. I want this to be relatively flat and parallel because it's got to slide through 2 mortises. We want it to smoothly slide through them without binding. Once we get that done and we have the rod done, now we need to create the head. And so I'm going to put this on here and cut out both of these together. You'll see how there's a rounded corner on each of the openings. When you put it together, it's easier to drill those as a rounded corner together and then cut them apart. So imagine putting these 2 head pieces together, and we're going to cut them out of 1 block. So about that size, 6 inches by something else. I'm really just kind of playing with this, spitballing, and seeing what comes out. I'm going to make a couple measurements in where I want the center of the auger bits to run. And so we'll put a couple center punches on there along the center line that was marked with a marking knife. And then that will give us a point for the auger bit to sit in and cut out the 3 circles, which is what I was originally planning on doing. And then I realized, wait a second, I cut it to the exact length. So the 3rd circle would end up being right on the edge of the board. Yeah, I gotta rethink that. We'll come back to that. That's one of the things I love about this. You can experiment, play with new things, and you never really have a right or wrong answer to it. You're just going to have some fun and see what comes out and see what you can learn along the way. For the outside corners, I find it easier to just grab a chisel and knock off the majority of the corners. You can really munch through these, and this is a very fun set. So you start with one level and then take it a little steeper and a little steeper, and once you get close, then you can just come in with a file and clean it up, and the file gives you that beautifully smooth, clean edge. I love the surface left from a file on there, and rounding over a corner gives you that really nice, clean, buttery surface. If you need a little more work, grab a rasp first and then hit it with a file. So now we need to take this 1 piece and turn it into 2 pieces. So we're going to take that line we cut earlier and run right down it. You notice at this point I am running into going back and forth and back and forth. I was off the line a little ways, and I find if you're off the line, it's actually best to backtrack, back up a little bit, and then turn the saw and correct the line where you started to go off. Don't try and correct it down at the bottom. That way you'll get a much better work all the way through it. I'm going to clean up all the corners, knock off the little piece in between, and then flatten the 2 faces. There's going to be some material put onto the actual clamping surface. The original ones I have were cork, a rather heavy piece of cork, which I may play with in the future. I have some leather, which we'll be working on another one here. Sometimes getting this piece in between can be a little bit tricky, but I don't know. I kind of enjoy this manual adjustment going between the chisel and the spoke shave and the rasp and the file and getting everything down to the point where it just feels good in the hand. So there's 2 blocks. Now we need to cut mortises for that slide to actually run through. So to make sure that the mortise is in the exact same place, I'm going to glue these together with some tape. Not with glue. I'm going to be using a mortise chisel, and so I'm laying out the exact width of the mortise from the mortising chisel. And this mortising chisel is what I chose to make the exact same thickness as the beam. So when choosing the width of the beam, I found the chisel I wanted to make sure that the mortise was the right size. I'm going to lay out the measurements on one side and then bore more than halfway through from one edge, and then transfer those lines around to the other side and bore more than halfway through from the other side and connect the dots. Normally for a small 1/4 inch mortise, I'm not going to bore out everything with the auger bit. I'm going to just do it with the chisel. But because this one is so deep and so long, I found it much better to actually come in and bore it all out first. Then we can take the chisel in and work it back and forth. I'm going to use one to pare out the sides and get rid of the vast majority of it. And then I'll come back in with the mortising chisel, which is the correct size, and bring it all down into the correct dimensions and run down the outside edges. Now on the original one, the mortise was ever so slightly tipped so that when they're not under pressure, the two faces are actually tipped in towards each other. And then when they're under pressure, then they're locked at 90 degrees, and so you actually get a parallel face on there. On this one, I actually wanted to experiment as well, not having those two little sliding cauls on there, which help you break it apart. So once it's actually locked in place, it makes it a little easier to take it apart with those. But I wanted to see what can I do to actually take it apart and not have that just save two more pieces in the process. And so in doing so, I need to make sure that these are actually square so that they don't actually turn a little bit. We also need to cut the back end that's going to be fastened into one of these. You saw I cut the end a little bit earlier, put some wedges in there, apply a little bit of glue. Okay, a lot of bit of glue. Okay, an over amount of glue, and then we can drive the wedges in, so this won't come out. I like putting a lot of epoxy on here because I can always plane it off and clean it up, and epoxy actually works very, very well. For the two faces that will be holding the pressure, I'm going to be using some leather, so I'm grabbing some scrap pieces that I have, making them bigger than the actual face, and I'm going to glue those on with more of that epoxy I had. So when I had one ready, I just got both of them ready to glue up at the same time. And look at that, we can actually clamp them together because we have a clamp to clamp them together. Once that's set, we can come back and trim off the faces. Whether you do this with cork or leather, it's basically the same step. I do like to make it bigger and glue it on rather than trying to make it the exact size because you never quite know how that's going to come out. For that tenon that sticks through, we can take off the majority of it with a chisel and then come in with a plane and detail it down. And I really love the feeling of coming through and cleaning off a surface and getting that messy glue, and then, oh, it just actually feels good. And just like that, this test article is done. We just need to finish it because, you know, what would a project be without boiled linseed oil? A lot of times with these test pieces that I make, I actually don't finish them because I don't really need to. I'm just experimenting and trying with it. But in this case, I want to finish it because I want to see, does it actually change the friction, the amount of force I can put into it? Do they slide around with different finishes on it? So I'm just going to be putting the standard boiled linseed oil, let it soak up as much as it wants, put on more, let it soak up more, put on more, let it soak up more. And once it's stopped soaking it up, I can wipe off the excess and then put on some paste wax. I'll let the paste wax sit on there for several hours and then come back and polish the paste wax off. And we've got a nice clean finish. And then we can test them out and see if they work. And so it's really kind of a simple design with 3 pieces on here. And there's a few things I learned on this, getting the angles correct on the slides, making them tight enough so that they slide on, but loose enough so you can still clamp them. And these actually clamp down with just hand force, and just that's all they need. And so for a lot of luthier work, you don't want a crazy amount of force. You just want enough to hold them in place. And yes, they're so strong. I can't pull them apart. If I really, really, really wanted to, I could probably break something, but they weren't going to slide. I was going to deform the head, so they are actually surprisingly good. And I had a lot of fun learning in this, so stay tuned for more. So there you have it. Now, this one is actually a bit of a prototype for me. I'm going to be making a few of them over the next few weeks because I want to actually do a class here soon. And I thought this would be a fun one to do a live talk through where people can come and actually build one along with me live. I made it off of a design from this one. This is a luthier's clamp, and it's designed to not have much pressure. There's nothing really cranking it down. It's just hand pressure. So I'm just putting something together with what I can put together, and then it holds itself at that point. And so the idea is I clamp it on, and I squeeze it down as much as I can squeeze it down, and then it holds itself in place, and it's putting that much pressure on. And then to take it off, it usually takes a bit of a tap on the back, and they pop loose. And so it's kind of like the hold fast for anywhere other than you're not actually hammering it on. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could hammer on the back and really tighten it down. This one I'm experimenting more. This one has a few of these little pieces in here that make it a little bit easier to slide. So I wanted to see how it would work without that. And so I haven't decided yet whether or not I'd want to put those on. Those just add a little more complexity to it. I like the idea of just having 3 pieces of wood and being able to make a clamp that actually goes relatively well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What could I do better? What could I change? What would make this a fun project? Would you want to build a set of these? Otherwise, let me know in the comments down below. And thank you. That does help out the channel. Anytime you could put a comment down there, or you join the group of people who just do comment down below. Thank you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here. You guys keep us going, get us in front of more people. And those are the people over here as well. Those are patrons on Patreon. They help us even more. Patrons and members, people who click the thank you button down below, financially keep us going. And without you guys, we wouldn't exist. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more about that, then you know what to do. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Ow, 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 ow. Sorry, leg clamp.